So happy IEEE Day, everyone, and welcome to the Silicon Valley chapter of IEEE Computer Society event. I am the chapter chair, Vishnu Pendyala. Ours is the largest chapter in the Silicon Valley section of IEEE with over 3,500 subscribers in our mailing list and a strong following of over 12,300 on Twitter alone. We are uniquely positioned by the virtue of our location and available expertise, and thanks to the online modality, we are able to avail of expertise from all over the world. Like today, we are joined by people from India and other areas as well. So today's event is a panel discussion on ethical AI, artificial intelligence, shaping the future responsibly. The moderator for this talk is Meenakshi Jindal. Over to you, Meenakshi. Please take it away.
Thank you, Vishnu, for the introduction. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today as we delve into a critical topic in the realm of artificial intelligence, ethical AI that can help us to shape our future responsibly. In an era defined by rapid technology advancements, it's important that we navigate the complex landscape of AI development with careful consideration of its ethical implications. I'm truly delighted to extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you who joined us today. We have the privilege of being joined by a distinguished group of speakers, everyone expert in their respective fields, to share their insights with us on ethical AI. As we navigate the complex landscape of artificial intelligence, it became increasingly apparent that ethical considerations and adherence to international agreements play a critical role in shaping the trajectory of AI development. So let's begin our session with the thought-provoking questions. So my first question is, do you all agree that after following all the ethical constraints and international agreements or standards would not put us at an existential risk? So I would like to hear our panel perspective on this. So who would like to share their thought first here? Yakum. I think you're muted, Doctor.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm Dr. Kumaravel from Bharat University, Chennai, India. And I would like to take the first question on existential risk after putting all the standardization. So, the development of ethical framework and international agreements, usually they don't go parallelly. The development is faster, but the agreement efforts are very slower. And then adoption of outpacing regulation. No, economic countries, they want to rush, adopt for a very good economic gain and a competitive advantage. So these type of catch-up challenges are there in terms of failure. I mean, negotiations will be failing, consensus building will be slower, and constructing the legal process also will be slow. So there are many facts participating in this scenario. Suppose we say how many participants, 14 participants are talking about ethical consideration of a future for a responsible life. But it's like tiny butterflies or worms. They are staying inside the cool and safe sparrow's nest or eagle's nest, say. Even though it is safe, the nest is not, it is owned by eagle or sparrow. So I visualize such a kind of context here. The risk is still there. So it's my kind of opinion. So whatever standardization or
I'm happy to.
Yeah.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, I thought you were finished.
So what I'm trying to say is whatever negotiations or consensus, legal processes taking place, finally the risk, like, in the nuclear weapons, we go with agreements, everything. But in AI's case, they are not like a nuclear weapon, because nuclear weapon cannot make any decision, or nuclear weapon cannot make its own nuclear weapon. So in that sense, our AI is very much threatening, but still we as a human intelligent creature, I still believe that we will postpone this risk. So that's my opinion, humble submission.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. Anyone want to share their insights on it?
Yeah, I would like to give my 10 cents or 5 or 20, I still don't know how many cents. So I think most of guidelines that we have for AI governance globally, most of them are still very high level, even though we have kind of more concrete guidelines also, and even legal requirements also for AI systems in regulations, just as the GDPR when it comes to processing of personal information. And also in the US, we have like a couple of regulations that already apply. I think so. Even if they're more concrete and already like legal obligations, not just good governance guidelines such as the UNESCO guidelines, all those responsible AI principles. I think that from my perspective, we still lack the tools or the clarity about the tools, how to put those principles into practice. So in some cases, it's probably not so much of an issue. So, and we do have tools. So a lot of people are familiar with, for example, for explainable AI with LIME or SHARP, you have like models explaining other models, or we have guidelines already for bias. So we know we have to have diverse teams, and we should actually assess data sets for diversity and outliers and so on. But if the use case is more complex, for example, as in generative AI, even though we have those guidelines, we still lack, I think, the means to really put them into practice. For example, when it comes to machine unlearning, although there is a ecosystem of researchers already, investing machine unlearning. So how could I delete, for example, personal data? I come from the privacy space, personal data in a training set that has been trained to come to a machine learning model. How do I get this training data point out of this whole system if the data subject or the individual who has a right, of course, to get his data deleted in many jurisdictions? So how do we put this into practice? And of course, even if we would manage all of those things, have the tools for all those really important responsible and ethical AI principles, there's still always the possibility of a black swan event. So I think in no circumstances, there's no risk in all areas, no matter what we look at. Thank you.
I can add my couple of cents, not more, as someone who works on this, right? As a developer, as an AI practitioner, as someone who's like participated in training and using models. When we talk about existential risk from AI, right? And when we're talking in the context of international agreements and standards, like they are more sort of, I see them as guidelines about like how ethical and responsible practitioners should use data to build AI and how they use AI. when we talk about constraints, like, as someone who's a developer, like I see sometimes constraints being set up in a prescriptive fashion by regulators. And that can sometimes be, as a guideline, it's good. Like I agree with the intent of regulators, but that can sometimes be detrimental to responsible and ethical practitioners of AI. And the reason for that is like, AI has kind of, it's out there in the hands of everyone, right? People who are responsible and ethical about its usage, they're not trying to break the laws. But there are elements in our society, whether like at an individual or state level, who might use the new technologies to build things that become an existential risk. And so when we set prescriptive constraints, we are actually potentially stopping researchers or ethical researchers from trying to understand what those black box risks are, like, what potential risks are we shying away from because of these ethical constraints, because of prescriptive things. So we need more than just international agreements and standards as a means to keep us away from AI becoming an existential risk, right? We do need regulation, we do need these guidelines, we do need privacy laws, things like that to make sure we're practicing AI responsibly. And there's a guideline for newcomers to this field so that they know where to start and where to go. But that by itself, I don't believe is sufficient to keep us away from AI, someone making AI an existential risk. I don't think it'll become an existential risk by itself, but we need to understand what people can do with it and need new tools, like others said, to deal with it.
Yeah, so to answer your question directly, Meenakshi, I do not agree. One cannot foresee everything years in advance, right? For instance, who would have thought that social media will lead to mental health issues and cause suicides? But in my opinion, there is more existential risk from our other actions than from AI development. Climate change is a serious issue. Political tensions across the globe are the other cause for worry. In ancient times, powerful knowledge such as the Vedas were given limited access to a certain elite class of people so that it does not fall in the hands of people who can misuse due to half knowledge. Such a practice is no longer accepted in today's flatter societies. There are checks and balances, but obviously they are not serving the purpose enough. For instance, these ancient scriptures state that water and air are purifiers. The Sanskrit word for air itself means purifier, pavana, right? Still, people made the universal purifiers impure, and we are all experiencing the consequences by way of extreme weather. There are checks and balances like smog check, air quality index, and so on, but how much have they helped? The existential threats that are facing today are from mediocre intelligence and half-baked knowledge that are polluting the environment and propagating in anti-science discourse. If we indeed are successful in creating better intelligence, I think it will be more benevolent than us humans. So that is my opinion.
Yeah, thank you for sharing interesting thoughts, Vishnu. Let me ask you a follow-up question then. Do you think whether effective or not, will there be a time when there is a globally recognized set of rules for governing AI? Maybe not today, but in future?
Yeah, so unlike nuclear arms or stem cell research, artificial intelligence is too broad and pervasive. So I don't think we'll ever get to that point. We do not yet have rules on research that can facilitate a biological warfare, right? For instance, even if we have, there will be governments who privately, clandestinely pursue unethical control over the world. So even if we reach a time when there is commonly accepted regulatory control in the world, implementation will be a challenge as governments will continue to pursue hidden agenda. That's my take on.
Anyone else want to have their take on this one?
And then Katharina,
I can do it. Okay, unless
Yeah.
Katharina wants to go. Go ahead, Katharina. Okay. No, so I was going to say, like, I do foresee, and there are attempts at governments or organizations, entities trying to come up with a rule, like, rule book for governing AI development, AI usage. But I think it's hard, like Professor Vishnu said, like, for something to stick and be followed, it's going to be a problem to enforce. At the same time, like, we do need some sort of a framework that becomes a guideline, or at least like a measuring stick for like how people are building and using these things, right? And it's going to be hard for it to come from some governing body, or what I mean is like, a government or something that is outside the scientific community, because just the pace of development of AI and like technology surrounding it is so fast. I would be surprised if like any one person or like even a small group of people can keep up with everything and anything that's happening. At the same time, like, we're wielding this new technology that has so much power to do good. At the same time, like, potentially do a lot of damage. I don't know how, but like, we as a scientific community need to come up with some sort of a rubric for how we measure the direction we take AI development in, to make sure we are not like causing harm, or like what are the things that can cause harm, things like that. That's just like my short take on it.
Yeah. Thank
What
you,
I'm
Chinmay.
thinking is, I do think we see already like global principles emerging, such as in other areas, like in privacy, for example, we have the OECD principles, the same for responsible AI, we have principles or UNESCO principles. So I think there will be some very high level understanding, but if we have, for example, one of those principles being human in the loop, or aligning with human values, I mean, what's human values? I don't think there is a common set of human values all around the globe. So it could go in that direction, that we're again then talking about, more like Western-based human values, for example. So there's this cultural and context that will always, I think, need to color or influence what we even mean by those principles, such, for example, human values. And then also, in general, in international law, we have an enforcement problem. So I cannot imagine that all of a sudden, when it comes to AI, we're better than when it comes to climate change or nuclear weapons, or I don't know, did COVID really show that there's a global, pulling in one direction? I don't know, probably not to the fullest degree. So I think principles are easy to agree upon, but what those will look in practice will then need to be specified by regional laws, and they will differ.
Yeah, that reminds me of some rules coming from Europe. So how might the European AI Act can influence global standards and the practices for AI governance? Anyone want to talk about the European rules and the governance?
So if I may start, and then maybe you can add. So I mean, the EU AI Act, and we just saw a post by the leader of the European Parliament, who is leading the negotiations, that they closed one round of negotiations. So it's really moving forward. They will have extraterritorial effects, and it will also be the very first example of a horizontal, all-encompassing regulation for AI, especially regulating super high risk AI systems that will be forbidden, and then high risk AI systems with a lot of compliance tasks, and then less so, more like transparency measures for lower risk AI systems. And if you offer your services on the market, or if you're an importer so that, I mean, who will be affected by the AI Act has some shades, but in the end, if you're like developing a system and you're deploying it on the market, or the output of your systems will affect European residents, then you will be obliged to comply with the EU AI Act. And for this reason, I think it will have a vast effect, because if the US, who still doesn't have such a comprehensive AI regulation in the pipeline, I mean, there are many drafts, but nothing like that we think will pass soon. If they do not align their concepts with the European ones, then companies will have challenges and issues. So it could be expected that the EU initiatives will have some global effect, such as the GDPR had in the past.
I think there is a question on the chat window. So the question is, do you have more hope for privatization alignment with values or alignment between governments? So the question, I think, is about whether private companies will do better with respect to public governments in terms of alignment. Anyone wants to take that? I think.
I can. Sorry,
yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead,
Chinmay.
Yeah. No, I can give it a shot. So I think private companies and governments, depending on which one you have, which one you're talking about, might have they both have different incentives. Private companies are, in good cases, trying to build a product for profit. And when I say good cases, I mean for delivering some sort of value, right, to the users. They're not trying to build nefarious intentioned products out there in the market. They're also incentivized to develop their technology, their AIs, their systems, as you can see with OpenAI coming up with something, and the whole ChatGPT starting a revolution where Google and Facebook and everyone suddenly had a timer going off where they had to start delivering their own AI models. So they're incentivized to iterate fast and deliver advancements in the form of value-add products faster. When you look at governments, they do not start with a mandate of developing AI advancements or creating regulation for it unless it becomes a topic that affects the population underlying it. Some governments might have incentives. Some states might have incentives to use these new technologies for monitoring or social monitoring of their populations, which is again a nefarious use of this. Same on the company side, in the quest to build their AI technology faster, better, get ahead in the market. Some of the companies might cut corners with what kind of data sets they use, what kind of privacy regulations they follow, or how they try to bypass it. Regulations might have some loopholes in it, how they try to exploit it, how they try to lobby the governments. So I think those kind of situations will always be there where every company in every state is trying to get one step ahead of the other. One way or another, it's important for us to make sure that both of these entities are aligned on doing the right things when we move towards advancement. And advancement is not achieved by infringing on people's privacy, people's rights, using data without consent, building things that are dangerous, that interact with weapon systems and things like that. So I like to be a positive person, and I would like to hope that when we talk about regulation, we also think about how to bring this kind of alignment. It's not going to happen by itself. That's my take.
Yeah, thank you, Chinmay.
Yes,
Anyone?
Yeah, so what I was trying to say was, so governments, of course, will enforce values on the private sector. That is their duty and responsibility. But if we also notice, governments are trying to become more and more powerful, increasingly powerful, even the democracies, right? So in their own practices, I'm not very sure how much they're going to align with the values, human values. Maybe private companies are more prone to align with the values, particularly with respect to regulation and compliance. I think private companies seem to be in a better position of aligning with the values than probably governments in the overall perspective. So that's my take.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So let us shift gears towards education now. What should be our approach to education in AI? So recently we noticed Chegg stock dropped after its management commented on the impact of generative AI on the education technology. So I know some of you are in the academia. So what do you think about the impact of generating AI on the teaching professions? Professor, Doctor, do you want to take this question?
Yeah, probably I'll go first. So I believe that it is imperative that AI education be expanded to the masses and even K-12, like the school students, primary to high school students. AI is certainly going to transform jobs, probably displace some people from their jobs. Every semester, I ask my machine learning students to look at the US Bureau of Labor Statistics occupational classification and ask them to think which jobs can be automated using artificial intelligence. So just to inspire them to come up with their own startups. But as I mentioned, the control will still be in the prompts and the human will always be in the loop. For better prompt engineering, I think people need to understand how AI works. So AI literacy is kind of what computer literacy was a few years ago. And with respect to the teaching jobs themselves, see, invention of the calculator did not replace elementary school math teachers, right? So tools can never replace teachers. That is my opinion. They may be able to aid the teaching, but I don't think they can replace the teachers. Even before the generative AI movement, there was also this MOOCs, right? Massively online classes. So they were not very successful in replacing the teacher as such, right? They created more teachers, but I think the teaching profession, I don't think is in any threat. That's my opinion.
Yes, me too. So I also am not like pessimistic. It's just, I mean, it's a completely disruptive technology, of course, but as has been the car or nuclear weapons or alike. And so I also think education needs to embrace generative AI and come up with like tech policy maybe, or policies how to use it, but not to ban it. I mean, I think this is so absurd because anyone is using it anyways. I mean, I would not have wanted to live in Italy this short while where they said they would ban ChatGPT. I love it. I mean, it's so good, but I'm better, I would say, you know, like my writing is still different from the output of ChatGPT. So me as a, you know, also being a writer or researcher, I'm not worried that I will be replaced, but of course I get better and faster with ChatGPT. So in that sense, I also hope this will be picked up by, you know, people who, also educators who develop curricula and policies for their institutions ASAP. And there have also been increasingly resources how to use generative AI for teachers or universities. So, I mean, probably most of us have seen that OpenAI recently published a series of blog posts on it, so how to use it. And also there are a couple of resources. For example, Stanford has some resources how teachers can explain AI. So MIT has primary school AI education project, and there's this AI education project that has also resources. I myself, I mean, this is like super recent, but as we are in the Bay Area, I came up with a new project for volunteers. It's called AI Education Network. So the primary goal was to just, offer going to schools in the Bay Area, explaining AI to kids or teenagers. But now it's expanding as people reach out to me from over the country, and also even from other parts of the world. And I think it's so super important that educators, meaning teachers, professors, but also content providers who provide content how to explain AI and machine learning to kids, as well as policy people, how to address the issue of AI literacy, that we all share and come together to really, with the child in mind, how to empower children to become part of this conversation of AI risks and opportunities. Because I mean, I think the most important thing, as you said, is there always needs to be a human in the loop, and also the end user is a human in the loop. So we need to deliver, I think, the message that you never should turn off your critical thinking, and nothing from the internet is ever surely correct. You always have to think and double check. But also, of course, there's a lot of opportunities. And so I hope that both will be taught and embraced by all of us. And if you want to join the AI Education Network, please reach out to me and write to me on LinkedIn. I would be glad if we grow.
Yeah. Thank you, Katharina. Any opinion from Chinmay and Doctor?
Yeah. No, my take on this is like, whenever there is something new, some new technology, right? There is due to lack of awareness for a lot of people, like, there's always a little bit of fear with it, right? We have seen this with when computers became a thing and using computers became a thing, and people are fearful that computers will replace their job, right? When I see a new technology, the optimist in me tells me to ask this question of like, how can I use this to do my job better? How can I do more? How can I deliver more value with it, right? Right now, we are at this point where just AI, that this buzzword has exploded so fast in like our common lingo and newspapers and websites. Wherever you go, there is a lot of fear among a certain demographic of people who think that this will hurt them in some form or fashion, or this is not for them, or this will leave them behind. So I think the most important thing that we as AI practitioners, as AI educators need to do is we need to explain what AI is and what it is not, right? A lot of times, like, because of movies or like, common whatever misconceptions, AI is made out to be, it's a very overloaded word. It's made out to be everything that it's not, like, the destroyer of words, like it'll take over your jobs and everything. We need to explain to everyone, to students, what it is and what they can do with it, and try to come up with the initiatives like, Katharina mentioned, like, how can they use it for something they can relate it to do their job better. We need to make AI welcome, like this concept, this word sound welcoming to people so that they open themselves up to learning it and gaining more education. It's one thing to say like, how can we teach people? But it is not really helpful if people are not receptive, if they think this is something that's not for them. So the very first thing we need to do is like, how do we make this welcoming to them so that they can learn more about it?
So there's a question on chat. Do you think with that, will everything eventually become open source with AI? And what would be the effect of it from a copyright perspective?
So,
Please.
Go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead.
So I do not, absolutely not think everything will become open source. And the problem, I think, as for example, the open source initiative points out, is also, what does open source AI even mean? Because usually open source is defined, open source software, and has very specific characteristics. And now with open source ML or AI, I mean, there's so many other components involved that are not part of this open source software definition, this is one of the first challenges. But also there has been a great paper by, and I'm so bad with names, she's doing policy lead at Hugging Face. She has published a paper. I'm so sorry that I can't remember her name. I'm really bad with names. So she, this paper explains how actually AI or models are released, in various, not stages, but in various forms. And some of them are called open source, but they're not really open source. So it's very messy, I believe, in this open source AI ecosystem. And also when it comes to being open source in the scope of the EU AI Act or other European acts, there's also still a little bit of unclarity, although in general, of course, if you fork it and use it for your own purposes, then you are covered, or you have to comply with the upcoming EU AI Act, and everything, before the developer, they are not responsible for downstream applications. But this might, I wouldn't say change, but I mean, responsible AI principles should also be applied to open source projects in general, and that causes many questions around open source governance. There's so many different models and accountability. So I think this whole open source and AI the bubble or sphere there's a lot of things to unpack and look at it in more detail.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. So that boils down to, let's think around the research area. So what role will these emerging technologies like AI and machine learning will play in shaping the way research is conducted and analyzed? Because we just talked about the education, but there's so much research that we're trying to do. And with this AI, do you think that will impact or block the innovations?
Yes, certainly. Artificial intelligence has the potential to boost research as well, right? Increasingly, artificial intelligence will be used to develop more artificial intelligence and machine learning. That is a trend that is happening today, and I think it will continue. AI has been helping in many areas, and research is no exception. In fact, research is probably will benefit more than any other field with AI. We have seen so many applications in various domains which are using AI. I mean, these days, AI and machine learning are being taught in other disciplines of engineering and science disciplines. So the idea is that AI is going to help them with the research. So yeah, I think it has a lot of potential in the research domain.
Yeah, thank you, Professor.
I want to add something. So the research methodology itself must be modified, the AI tools can be used for automated data collection, interpretation, forming the new hypothesis. Moreover, the literature review part must be taken by natural language processing, irrespective of any research domain. And also we can apply the predictive analysis to improve the accuracy of predictions in the field like economics or epidemiology, etc. And mainly the reviewers for the publication are very scary, I mean, very rare also. So the AI tools can identify potential biases and flaws done by the so-called reviewers who are in a very hurry to reject standing in a biased way. And yeah, there must be a training for every researcher in AI skills, and all the researchers must use the data visualization tool in either graphical form or data distribution, and especially in the healthcare and finance, regulatory compliance must be there, and resource allocation or funding, the computing or data capabilities for the research involved, for the AI infrastructures that should be properly defined for the coming researchers. This is my idea. Thank you.
Chinmay or Katharina, any take on this?
Yeah, I was in parallel trying to find a post I saw recently on some, but I didn't find it, on some medical research papers, and how I don't know which generative AI tool was used, and I don't know, but I found something else that I posted in the chat. It's about like how you as a researcher can prompt better than just, summarize this, summarize that. And this LinkedIn post, he has several steps how you can use it. But I also do think it has like super good implications, or it's supporting research, but how exactly, and already like use cases, I couldn't find them so fast. So I'm sorry that I couldn't say
No
more.
worries. Thank you for sharing this link. There's a question on the chat. What about making AI ethics concrete with the AI risk management models?
So yeah, I mean, if I may start, so the NIST AI risk management framework, which was the first final version was released this January. I think personally that this could be even like kind of on par or advertised by the US as like, its contribution next to the EU AI Act to some global risk management for AI. And I think that the AI risk management framework by NIST at first glance, it's kind of not easy to, it's not super accessible, such as the other frameworks they have. But if you really look at it, and if you look at it again and again, then I think it's a very practical tool actually to start your AI governance and also your AI risk management framework within your company, or you could at least use it to build your own AI risk management framework, especially if you're a smaller company and don't have a risk management framework that needs to be aligned with additional framework for AI. So I would recommend taking a look at the NIST AI risk management framework for sure, because it also has very practical steps that you can take for specific use cases in various scenarios. And if you document everything properly, I think that's a very good step to show that you aim to act responsibly.
Yeah, thank you for sharing the details, Katharina. Anyone else take on this question? Otherwise, we'll move on to next.
I think the person who asked the question is the author of a paper. He posted the link on the chat window, Artificial Intelligence Risk Measurement.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you for sharing this paper.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Okay. So do you guys think, like, is there any danger of an all-powerful dark AI similar to the dark web?
So I think the answer is a yes. An artificial intelligence system that is powerful, operates clandestinely, and poses significant risks is a possibility. That's my feeling. I do not know how exactly the dark web operates and why it is so difficult to destroy it. A few months ago, Experian told me that my decades-old Hotmail account which I treasure dearly, was put on the dark web. So, and true, I started receiving all those emails from Nigerian kings and beautiful Russian girls in dozens every day. So when a private company can detect that my email is on the dark web, why can't the government destroy the so-called dark web? If we solve this mystery, I think it should be easier to think about the dark AI problem.
Yeah. So my take on this is like, again, so like we need to separate what people are doing with the technology itself, right? The dark web exists, it's run by a few people in ways that, again, I, like Dr. Vishnu, cannot completely comprehend, but it exists. It's run by few elements of our society, and that can do a lot of damage to people whose data is stolen, their identities are stolen, probably first things, right? When we talk about whether there will be an dark AI as such, we're talking about an application of AI to do something malicious or a bunch of malicious things that we need to look at, and we need to think about how we will regulate that, rather than how AI can lead to something bad, right? And this distinction is important because a lot of times this potential of a dark AI existing that will look like, what we've seen in the movie Terminator, for example, it kind of stops us from thinking about what are the other good things can be done with AI, what steps we need to take to check someone from using this for bad. So it's very important to separate AI itself from the connotation that dark AI brings. It's an application. We need to think about like how we can prepare for a time when someone plans to use this nefariously, and how we can check that from happening, or how we can stop it, mitigate it. Like, it's always going to be a cat and mouse game. Now, I think now that it's out there, I'm sure there's elements of the society that are trying to figure out how to surveil people in their state, how to monitor people, how to steal their data, how to steal their money, that kind of stuff. And we need to kind of like play that cat and mouse game and make sure we are addressing that dark connotation of it, rather than labeling something as a dark AI or something that has a potential to grow into it, just to make sure we are not losing track of what AI can be.
I'm thinking, so the dark web is, even though it's called dark, it wasn't like intended to be like kind of something negative or so. So Tor or onion routing, I mean, it's also a privacy preserve. It was meant to be kind of a privacy preserving anonymous tool for good things like whistleblowing and things like this. So, but I think increasingly it got like in negative, a negative connotation because of child porn and all those really illegal content that there is on the dark web. But I think dark AI is not such a common term or defined term yet that we really know what we mean by it. So it could mean AI that is not transparent or does not even try to adhere to basic responsible principles, or that we don't understand. So how will we be able to detect malicious actors using AI? Maybe that's what dark AI is, because I'm not quite sure about the term yet.
Sure. So I think we hear a lot around what information is AI generated or what information is human generated, right? So what do you guys think, what will be the impact of AI generated misinformation on the web, specifically around the politics or anywhere? Because right now what you're searching on internet, you don't know like who wrote it What is the authenticity of that information?
Yeah, that is actually one of my areas of research. A few years back, there was a case where a person used bots to change the public discourse on microblogging sites, basically like Twitter and other sites, microblogging sites in South American countries. And it was proven that it changed the outcome of presidential elections. So if bots and social media can do so much, I think AI is much more powerful and certainly has the potential to undermine democratic processes. So staying ahead of sophisticated artificial intelligence generated content will continue to be a challenge. That gets complicated because governments have the responsibility of upholding principles of free speech and avoiding censorship. So striking the right balance between regulation and freedom of expression will become even more complicated, and it will continue to remain a complex task. So I think that is one of the biggest concerns I have with generative AI, more than even existential threat and all those things. I think misinformation is something that we need to really fear about.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. And there is a question like, is there any way to identify and tag the misinformation generated by AI? Maybe the AI can itself help to understand what is AI generated.
Yeah, in fact, that is one of my areas of research, like I mentioned. So we have been using quite a few machine learning models to detect misinformation, and also reason why it is difficult to detect misinformation. So it's a very complicated task. I have a few papers around that. So those who are interested can check them out. So yeah, efforts are already on in that direction.
I think when it comes to detecting if something is generated by AI, these attempts we have now, like watermarking, they do not really work. But there is research in this direction. I think it depends on the context, how important it is to have transparency if that some output was generated by generative AI, because if the whole thing is just like the whole paper or whatever it is, the whole text then and it's a good text and it's still original, I wouldn't personally care if you have also used generative AI to come to that result that is yours, because you only put those parts into it. That, I mean, I don't need to find every single thing that is why would I would. But of course, when it comes to exams and stuff, but I mean, where is it possible to really take super important exams? That's just my personal thinking, in a way that you are not observed. Even even if you take it online, usually you have to make photos and you're on camera, or you have to go to an office and you're not allowed to take anything with you. So I do not really see the big risk. If AI can solve the exam, how would it even do that without being detected? I mean, so misinformation is something else, I think. But so in general, I think we do not have the tools yet to really see if something is AI generated. And in classrooms or in education where kids do their homework at home, I think you can then ask understanding, questions to assess if the content was generated or written by the students themselves with, like, their own brains somehow involved. So I think also those additional questions would be useful, additional techniques to assess if the output was at least written in such a way, with or without generative AI, that the person who submitted it was really like thinking of what he or she is doing. You know what I mean?
Thank you, Katharina. Any question from anyone in the room? Because we are close to the end of the session.
So let me check.
I have one
a couple.
question.
Yeah.
Yes,
First of all, thank you so much for this panel. I found it very insightful. One question I have is about like the governance piece around AI that keeps coming up a lot. And I just wanted to know like your thoughts on if we were to have a governance process around incorporating AI, what would be like a good starting place?
So last year, I conducted a study with FTI Consulting, asking a variety of companies about their AI governance processes and how they go about it, and if they even have one already. And so most organizations started or do already have in place a very high-level policy with some basic principles. And we have so many great examples out there already, like Microsoft has so many good resources, IBM, Salesforce has principles defined, Facebook, Google. So there are so many that we can already like look at best practice principles. But then also the recommendation by those people that I talked to who are more mature in their AI governance journey, organizational AI governance journey already, they said that, you know, just to start and bring people, identify people who are also interested in responsible, trustworthy, or ethical AI and bring them together. And it's very important that they are also from various backgrounds. So look for people who are, you know, from security, privacy, engineering, legal, product, etc. And then look at those principles, or maybe define the principles together. And what do they mean for us? And maybe take one very concrete AI use case and think, what does this mean in this specific use case? What does non-bias mean for us in this specific use case? Where would we need to change something, or where can we have some responsible processes by design or whatever to implement those things? I think that's what I heard are the most, first steps that we could all like kind of do in our department or in all our smaller companies, or of course bigger companies. But bigger companies, they often have like, those satellites, like responsible people, like AI champions, responsible AI champions. And I also heard that they pick people who, express that they're interested. So I think also in bigger organizations, it can be helpful to just say, I would like to get involved in this.
Yes, that was very well answered. Thank you very much, Katharina.
Okay, so we are on time. So as we conclude our today's session on ethical AI, so I'm impressed by the knowledge and the breadth of perspective shared by our panelists today. So let's leave us here today inspired and committed to fostering a future where AI can serve us as a force for good, guided by ethical principles that prioritize fairness, transparency, and accountability for the work we are doing. So thank you all. Looking forward to our continued collaboration in the ethical advancements of AI.
So, Meenakshi, actually, there are a few questions on the YouTube chat and also in Zoom. Hopefully, we'll be able to take those questions in a different session. And so in the interest of time, we have to conclude. But before we leave, I just wanted to thank all the speakers and Meenakshi particularly for hosting for moderating the session and coordinating the session. So that's a small certificate of appreciation. If it was in person, we could have provided a memento kind of thing, but because it's a remote session, we're just giving out certificates. So Chinmay, thank you very much for your participation today. And
thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Katharina Koerner, for sharing some really great insights. And Professor Kumaravel, I know it's really late for you. You're joining from India.
Thank you.
So thanks a lot for staying awake for us and sharing these great insights.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to conclude by talking about our next event, which is on the 7th of November. So this is a Ask Me Anything series on big data technologies and applications. The speaker or the expert is Raghavendra Chunduri. He's a postdoc in the University of Colorado. So it's again going to be on Zoom and via YouTube Live. And the next event in December after that, sorry, how come this? Yeah, the December event is a talk by Steve Castleman. He's the CEO of Hotright Incorporated. It's on Tuesday, December 5th, and he's going to talk about a very exciting topic. It's a hardware topic. And he has a very impressive resume as well. You can check it out. The topic is the hot state machine, a runtime loadable microcoded algorithmic state machine. So stay tuned. There was a question on the YouTube chat, I believe, asking for if there will be more events on this topic. So yes, please watch out the space. We plan to host many more such events. So with that, I thank you all for this interesting session, and particularly the speakers and the moderator. Thanks, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.